I used to do lots of things.
I used to do things and I'd say things and Jesus, I was evil. Take things and break things and Jesus, I was evil. I never shook babies.
All right, new year, new stupidity, and
This is very true.
yeah,
It's been a few weeks.
yeah.
How are your holidays, Joseph?
Good. I visited the family, which is nice, and it's fun. In the weeks leading up to the holidays, me and my family we send each other a wish list, like I want this and that, and like my wish list was like 90% books, and my parents like we're tired of buying you books. Like, do you need stuff for the house? Like, do you need stuff from Home Depot? And like, nope, just books. At least you want to give me a bookshelf to put those books in. Like, other than that, just books.
What books did you get?
I got Lemmy. His autobiography.
Nice.
So that was cool. I got 3 books from Stephen Pressfield. Like he's the one who did the War of Art. So I got 3 of those books.
The War of Art, right. Yeah. You've talked about that one.
Yeah. So I'm glad I got that. There's a few other books. I don't know. It was mostly books.
We're going to talk about books too. Do you want to talk about that first or second?
Right. Yeah.
The book list. I mean, you wrote articles about it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We should talk about that. Yeah.
You want to do that before or after the elimination of harmful language initiative?
Let's do let's do the reading list one, because I think that'll take a little less time, and then that way we can dedicate more time to the banned harmful list words or whatever. But
right.
So overall my holidays were good. How about you, man?
Mine were good also. I swear, I know I talk a lot of shit about Australians on this podcast, but this had nothing to do with them being Australian. I was at a bar on New Year's in the city, which is dumb, but it was actually very fun. It was a small bar called Mr. Fong's or Dr. Fong's. I always forget which one. I think it was Mr. Fong's. The president of my college was named Dr. Fong, so I think that's why I'm getting that mixed up. Yeah, he died. And
nice.
So this bar is in the East Village, and it was a really fun time. And there's a point, I think it was around midnight, maybe a little before, a little after, and I'm going to the bar, and at first it was like packed, and then it kind of cleared out, and then it was like a good crowd, right? A very, had it stayed the same, I probably would have left earlier. And I walk, and I'm trying to get to the bar, and there's this group of people, a guy and maybe like 2-3 girls, and they're just taking up a ton of space, but they're not ordering drinks. Like, they got their drinks. So I'm trying to just kind of do this thing, kind of side shoulder my way through. Yeah. And I was drunk. I mean, it's fucking New Year's, but I wasn't purposefully doing anything. They were clearly taking up space to be dicks. Yeah. You could tell, they could have just moved a foot back and I could have ordered a drink. And they start saying shit to me. And I'm one of those people, I never start anything. I'm not a shit starter, as much as that might surprise some people. But if you start it with me, I won't back down. That's how I was playing sports growing up. Yeah. That's how I am with shit talking in a bar. So I forget what I even say. I say something back to him or whatever. I'm just trying to order my drink. I'm trying to get 2 vodka sodas. Yeah. And he comes up next to me. He's like, I'll throw you over this fucking bar. And this is not a big guy. He wasn't. He definitely couldn't have thrown me over the bar. Right. So I start saying, I started doing Superman poses and pretending that I'm oh, you're going to throw me over the bar now? And I'm I'm ready. And he turned back to his friends, and the girls are shit talking me or whatever. And and then I hear they have Australian accents. So I'm all right, now I can't lay off that. That's kind of it was them shit talking me and taking up a space of the bar was, a kindling, and then hearing that Australian accent was just gasoline. And I'm all right, here we go. So you motherfuckers, you're not even New Yorkers, you're fucking Australians here, taking up my city, even though I don't live there. I live there part-time. And I'm okay, I'm going. And they start walking away. I'm I'm going over them. I'm ready. And I'm putting my arms out, ready to go. And eventually, and later, this big Australian guy comes up to me, who probably could have thrown me over the bar. And he gets up right next to me, and he just starts talking to me. And I hear the accent and I'm like, oh, this guy's 100% with them. Like, this isn't a coincidence.
Right.
But I act like I wasn't like, oh, you fucking with them. I just like start talking to him. And we ended up like becoming friends.
Oh, nice.
We were like talking about, like, I was like, oh, he lives in Hong Kong. I want to visit Hong Kong. I think that'd be really cool. I think we like dapped up at the end, like hugged and like went back to our respective groups because they were definitely like, yo, that guy, or some shitty Australian accent. Like, imagine this in a shitty, gross Australian accent. Like, he was like, that guy was shit talking us, like, go scare him. And we just ended up being friends. And that was it.
Oh.
Yeah. Did not get thrown over the bar.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Good, man. Well, I'm glad that you were able to build some bridges down
right.
under.
Yes. Yeah. It's like they send this big Galook over and like, we become best friends. It's like, I'm 32. I'm not getting bar fights anymore. Like,
yeah. No, I'm glad to see that your bigotry is finally starting to
only against Australians.
I know,
sometimes New Zealanders and the British, basically white people and gypsies. Which is actually, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about gypsies in here too, and in the next segment. So today, so to give some fucking structure to this show, we're going to talk about two main topics. One is honestly one of the topics that gets me so fucking fired. Both these topics get me really fired up. The first is this weird online phenomenon of shitting on people's reading lists, which I don't understand. I cannot stand it. And you actually, ironically, are the one who wrote an article about it, which is cool. And we didn't like talk about this either. It was kind of like a mind meld thing. And then we're going to talk about something else I hate, which is policing language. It's way worse than I thought. If you have any frame of reference to this, it's the Stanford, what I quoted earlier, Elimination of Harmful Language Initiative. And we'll go into more detail about what that is. It's horrifying and stupid. So we'll start with the reading list, and Joe, why don't you tell us about that?
So for those of you who don't know, Lex Friedman is a podcaster. He's become pretty big. It seems like just like in the last year or two that he's become pretty big because he started off just kind of focusing on sort of science and AI. He's an MIT researcher, so he focuses a lot on science and artificial intelligence, but he's also started to have more a wider variety of guests on the show. Like he's had comedians and journalists and things like that. So he's become pretty big. I generally like him. I like his show quite a bit. He's had some pretty cool guests on the show, and so I like his approach. But so he did something that was completely harmless. He just shared a tweet at the end of 2022. I have it right here. I'm reading a book a week in 2023. Classics, sci-fi, nonfiction, or anything people highly recommend. I'll keep adjusting the list. Start on Monday, done by Sunday. Might make low-key videos of takeaways. If you want to read along, the current list is here. And the list is just sort of a list of mostly just classics. Like there's 1984 by George Orwell. There's Brave New World. There's The Stranger by Albert Camus. 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. Animal Farm. So it's just a bunch of classics. Frankenstein, Dune, the brothers Karamazov. I know he's really into Russian literature. And so it's like the most like, here's a good list of sort of classic literature. And for the most part, people were going, oh, okay, cool list. I recommend this and that. But he's also pissed off a lot of people who don't have, who are just a bunch of pieces of shit, who are like, this is just like, it was weird. Like in the article that I wrote, I kind of broke down like the types of criticisms that he received. And so one of the types of criticisms was like, this is just sort of 12th grade reading list shit. Like, what are you, in high school? And then other people were like, this is not sophisticated, or you're not giving enough time to each book, because he wants to read each book in 1 week.
That's funny because that's weird. Some people are arguing both sides of that against him, saying, one, you're not giving enough time. These books like deserve more contemplation than just pure reading, I guess. And then the other one was like, these books shouldn't take you a week to read. Like some of them are so it's like this poor guy. And I want to give a little more info on Lex. Like if you ever heard him, Michael Malice is good friends with him. They're both born in the ex-Soviet Union. I think Lex is from Russia, and I know Michael Malice is from Ukraine. But Lex honestly kind of sounds like a robot. He's he's kind of the epitome of soft-spoken. I don't think I've ever heard him raise his voice. Me in the first 6 minutes of this show have yelled more than I've ever heard Lex yell. He's very cerebral. Like you said, he's an MIT researcher, extremely soft-spoken, but like kind of the quintessence of genuineness. like genuine
Authenticity, I guess.
authenticity, like just a really genuine guy that
Yeah.
honestly just wants the world to be a better place, and he's really into robots and AI and like love
Creativity and
just and these people shitting on it, like I think they know that. They don't think this is just some random guy. Maybe
right.
some do, but like the people who really were being vile, like actually know him, like know him as in who he is. And it's just like, why would you waste your time shitting on someone's reading list? Also, this is a great reading list.
Yeah.
I counted, I've read 17 of these in the first section.
Right.
These are my favorite books. Like I said, 1984, Brave New World. I mean, these should be required reading. Animal Farm. Those three alone should be required reading for any American.
Yeah.
Then for sci-fi, which a lot of this was sci-fi or sci-fi based, you have Dune, which is, you know, one of the pillars of sci-fi. Frankenstein, which is kind of considered the first sci-fi novel ever.
Right.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Then you have more existential books like The Stranger, The Plague. Those are both Camus. Foundation, of course, is another sci-fi staple. So like these are just great books. One, I don't think he ever said he never read them, right? I think he has read a lot of them.
Yeah.
So maybe he read them before you fucking read them, you jerk off. Like who are saying those like 12th grade. He could have read them in 9th grade. He wants to read them again.
Yeah, exactly.
I just reread The Catcher in the Rye 3 weeks ago. It's one of the books. I'm not a big rereader, as you know. It's in the Reckless Musecast. Like the Reckless Muse publication. I don't reread a lot of books, and my whole thing was about rereading my favorite book and actually deciding not to do it. But that is one of the few books I have reread at least 4 times in my life.
Right.
And I read it in high school and I read it at 32. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's crazy, you know. And when people were making the accusation that he wasn't spending enough time with each book, especially like the thicker, more profound books, it's like, you know nothing about Lex. Like, first off, like he's probably read most of these books like numerous times, and he probably has a pretty solid understanding of the book, and maybe he wants to get another understanding of it. Also, like the guy's from what I understand, he's a workaholic. So I'm sure that, you know, and he's also very intelligent. So it's like it might take me a month to read, you know, a piece of a classic Russian book and fully understand it, where it might take him a week to do it because he's a very smart, like, so it's like,
or he might be cracking open the book between creating like a robot and writing some algorithm, and then in between he's going to read Dostoevsky. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, he's not just sitting down and reading the books. And I think the best example here, if you look at 1 week, it says week of May 1st, The Little Prince. That's a children's book. I have it on my shelf. It's one of my favorite children's books. You can read that in one sitting in 30 minutes. After that, he has probably the longest book on here, I believe, which is The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. Like, that book would probably take me 4 to 6 weeks to read.
Yeah.
You know, it's extremely dense Russian novel with all of these characters. And again, I've read that one also. Like, it's just so strange to me that this animates people so much about what people are reading.
And how they're reading it, and how they're
reading. Yeah.
Does it bother you that a guy's? It's like, even if he was just skimming each of these books, like, I'd rather that someone skims a piece of classic literature than just sit around playing video games all day. It's like, hey, at least you cracked open a book. You did something. That's cool, I guess.
That's always been my argument, Joe. That's always been my argument. I don't give a shit if you're starting from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, going all the way to the last Harry Potter, whatever that one is, like Deathly Hallows, whatever, and just starting it over again. I don't care you're reading. Right. Eventually you'll get off that. You might read something else. Maybe you'll buy one of my books and read those at bendelessio.com. But like, you like at least you're fucking reading. Like, I don't care. I never cared. Right. I do think you should expand your horizons, and that's what he's doing. He's reading all different types of stuff here. It is high sci-fi heavy, and you know what? Why don't you give more of the criticisms, because that was one part of the criticisms, but then of course there's more of the more expected other types.
Well, I mean, so, you know, like Nassim Nicholas Taleb,
he might be the biggest dick on Twitter,
and it's
which is amazing.
Like, I don't know a whole lot about him. You know, every once in a while, like, I'll read, you know, like a piece of his writing, or someone will quote him, and I'll be, oh, that's pretty cool, I should check out more of his stuff. But then when I see him on Twitter being like a complete asshole, just like the most condescending academic prick ever, it's like, man, like that.
Dude, Twitter's ruined some people for me. It really sucks. I mean, and it introduced me to more people, so I love that. But like, I actually was just listening to another podcast that talks about this briefly. I can't read Stephen King anymore. I've talked about on the show. I honestly can't. I don't give a shit about political views, really. It's not that. It's not that he's the most like cringe Democrat establishment guy. Like, I really wouldn't care. That wouldn't be enough for me to take his books off my list. Is when he started talking about like disinformation and censoring people. I'm like, dude, you're a horror writer who used to be like cutting edge and controversial and provocative. Like, you're going to talk about censoring people and disinformation. Like, get the fuck out of here. I'm done. Like, I'm not reading your books.
Yeah, there have definitely been some people whose work I admire, but I'm like, I like your work too much. I have to unfollow you. I don't want your. I don't want to learn more about your personality. Do you know an example
off the top of your head?
Not too many specific examples. There definitely been some actors and some
actors are rough.
Yeah, where it's like, oh yeah, I like that movie you're in. Yeah, sure, I'll follow you on Twitter. And I was like, okay, unfollow, forget it.
Yeah.
But Taleb, man, like so here's what he tweeted out. And I think he's still probably tweeting about it. For the last week or so, he's still been just kind of like taking the occasional snipe at him. But here's what he initially wrote. If you don't get why, between 2019 and 2022, I turned down exactly 10 requests to be on his podcast. This will provide a succinct explanation. And he quote tweets the book list. By the way, if you want more cues, Mr. Lex Friedman does not seem to be part of the faculty at MIT. Research scientist could be an unpaid external status that allows library access. And it's like, dude, like, why are you shitting at
And I think people prove that wrong. Like, no, he is actually on the staff at MIT.
Yeah. And he goes, you tech people are not getting it. Anyone who pretends programmatically reading, discussing, and digesting these books one a week is a total fraud. You fall for the shallow, vapid, overactive poser inflating his scientific image. Idiots, you deserve Lex Friedman. Like, Jesus Christ, he's just reading books. Like,
it's and again, it's Lex Friedman. He's like the most genuine, nice guy I've ever heard.
Right.
He like won't say a bad thing about anyone. In fact, his response to him was like, I'm sorry you feel this way. I love your work. Like, I'll still be reading you or something like that, which but good for him.
Yeah. He's great.
He is great. It's so strange to me. It's these guys like I don't know who are you doing this for?
And, you know, like some of these criticisms could have been made, you know, like if Taleb had just tweeted at Lex, like, hey, you got a great list here, but do you think that, do you think that once reading one book a week, do you think that's enough time to fully appreciate it? Just curious. It's like he could have like made the same point in a nice way. Maybe Lex could have been like, oh, you know, maybe for some of these I'll dedicate 2 weeks to or whatever. But it's like you could have turned it into a nice discussion.
Yeah, but then we're not talking about it on our podcast, and that's what they want. They want the engagement, which is like the biggest. I mean, that's honestly that's like the bedrock of social media. I mean, that's what they said in the documentary. What was that documentary? The one that basically, like, the crux of it was, no, negativity is what we want. Right. That's what social media wants. It creates engagement, which keeps people on their screens, on their computers and their phones more. Like a negative tweet, a negative comment. Like, these are the things that we want. That's like the point. That's why tragedy and violence and political arguments are promoted so much.
Right.
So like more people. Like, I didn't know who this Taleb guy was before this tweet. Right.
Yeah.
And if you actually believe that there's no like all publicity is good publicity, I don't believe that.
Right.
But I could see how it's like, yeah, well, that is getting people to search him and to click on his profile and to perhaps click a link that then has an advertisement on it that gets him money. Like, that is why.
Yeah.
It's still dick though.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. But you know, good on you, Lex. I'm glad that you're broadening your horizons and
for the record, great. This is a great reading list.
Yeah.
Like I've read almost all these books, and if you haven't read them, you should.
Yeah.
If you have read them, maybe read them again. It's hard to reread The Brothers Karamazov. It's a very long and dense book.
Yeah,
it's an epic Russian novel, but like Siddhartha, Brave New World, like you might think of it differently. The Stranger, I've actually read that a couple times.
I'm reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius right now.
Oh, are you?
Yeah,
that's one I haven't read. I should read that.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, and another type of criticism I want to bring up was like the woke thing. Like,
well, that's what I was getting at too. Like the more expected. Like, there's all these. Like, where's all the women? Oh, Jesus Christ. All right. But that's the thing too. And why I hate that is because that doesn't go both ways. If you look at like a lot of the kind of, let's say, like 30-year-old liberal woman's reading list, it's all women.
Yeah, exactly.
And all women of color and white women and no men. And it's like, that's totally acceptable and fine. And I think that's also fine. Like, if that's all you want to read, that's all you want to read. I actually used to go out of my way to make sure that like every third book I read was by like a woman. Yeah. Or a person of color, even though that was more interspersed anyway. Like I would go on my way to do that. Yeah. No. And I don't anymore. Because it's like, fuck that. Like, I'm just going to read exactly what I want to read. If that's 10 trans black sex worker novels in a row, then I'll do that. If it's 10 straight white men who died 60 years ago, I'll do that also. Like, I don't care. I'm just reading exactly what I want to read. But I actually did used to go out of my way for this. And this kind of shit is what turns me off to that. Exactly. Where it's like, and this goes way before Lex Friedman. I remember some woman put out some article that was like, if these books are on his shelf, like like 10 warning signs that these books are on a shelf. It's like all of my favorite books. it's like Infinite Jest, Fahrenheit 451,
Mein Kampf.
Mein Kampf. Yeah. Well, that one. No, I'm kidding. No. We read Mein Kampf in college, like assigned to us. Yeah. Or a section of it. We read, it was this, I talked about this before in the show. It was this class where like you read a lot of books. It's called the Common Intellectual Experience. Yeah. Every freshman took it. You had to. And you read like sections from all different types of book. Communist Manifesto, Mein Kampf, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, Darwin, all types of stuff. And that was amazing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But, again, like these woke feminist critics, they could have made the exact same point in a way that was not condescending. They could have said, hey, if you want some more recommendations, check out some stuff from Maya Angelou or blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, cool. Or Isabel Allende. It's like, but no, it's like you have to be condescending.
Exactly. That's how it should be. And the last thing I'll say about this is, and why I stopped, I don't think I've read an article of GQ since. I used to read a lot of GQ and Esquire. They both obviously went woke. I don't know if Esquire did as much, but GQ. And they made this list that infuriated me. Yeah. It was not what you just said, which is how it should have been. It should have been, if you liked X, then check out Y, right? It would be like, if you like Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, read this book. And almost every time it was either a woman or a writer of color or both, right? Something like that. Yep. But it wasn't that. It was, don't read this instead, which of course is like, fuck you. Like you're telling me not to read Kurt Vonnegut and to read some person I've never even heard of before, and it's going to be as good. Like, get the fuck out of here. But you could have done, you enjoyed this. Why don't you check out this? I would have checked out tons of those books.
Yeah, I see the same exact things about Lovecraft, where it's like, 10 non-problematic authors who are not Lovecraft or something like that.
Maybe I want my authors to be problematic because they're interesting. Like, they have something to fucking say. Yeah. Like, it's interesting. My God. Right, what's problematic now, or like what you think isn't problematic now is going to be problematic later.
Yeah, exactly. And you hit the nail right on the head. Like, if the article was, if you love Lovecraft, here are 10 modern authors who are continuing the cosmic horror tradition. And even if they were all women and trans and gays, like, but that's cool. Someone, there are authors who are still writing in a similar style. I might check these out. Yeah. But no, it has to be that, like, don't read Lovecraft. Read these authors, these non-problematic authors instead.
And I can't see how that's helping their business. Like, I really can't. More people. I know Indiana, which is Vonnegut's home state. Like, that's most of the stuff most of the criticism I found on this article was about that. Was like they're saying like you don't want people to read Vonnegut. Mm-hmm. In states like Indiana, where it's not like New York City or something, like they're very protective of their icons, understandably, and every state is. But like Vonnegut's like their writer, and they're saying like, don't read him, read this piece of shit, like this other shitty book. One of them was, don't read the Bible, read this instead. It's like, people are reading the Bible for other fucking reasons than like fiction entertainment. Yeah. Like, so it's like, my God, are you like the density there? But anyway, I feel bad for Lex, but a lot of people came to his aid. It's a great list. Yeah. There's some other things. I didn't see these other ones. Here's some other suggestions I'm considering. Oh, dude, get Stephen King off here though. I guess this is on writing. All right, if you're gonna read anything, I guess it'd be that. Yeah. Fahrenheit. The Alchemist. I actually think it's a very overrated book. I do not really like it. Do you like it?
No, I don't know. I haven't read that one.
Oh, The Alchemist. It's very very popular. I'm just looking at. Oh, Good Man is hard to find. We talked about that with Kay Clarity on the show. The Road. Have you ever read Cormac McCarthy?
No, I haven't, but I've seen The Road.
Yeah, it's a good movie too. But
Yeah.
I read Blood Meridian. It's one of his most famous books.
I heard it's pretty brutal.
It's very brutal. That doesn't bother me. You know, he like doesn't use punctuation.
Oh, really?
And I'm like, maybe there's a reason that punctuation exists. Like, it really bothered me. It's stripped down writing, which I like very Hemingway, but it'll be like there aren't commas or like parentheses when someone's speaking. It's like I don't know what's happening.
Oh, shit.
And it really bothered me. I'm like, shit, is this all of his books? Because it kind of turned me off to him, to be honest. And I like I'm into Westerns. I like that stuff. It's interesting. It's really dark. The Road is obviously a really grim post-apocalyptic movie. I haven't read it, but Blood Meridian is probably his most famous book. And I'm like, I have it on my shelf over there, but it's kind of turned me off to reading them again.
Yeah. Well, you could just go back and fill them in. Like,
just become an editor.
There's a comic book podcast I used to read, or I used to listen to years ago, and it was like these two British guys who were really funny, and one of them, and so they would review like newer mainstream stuff, but they would also review independent comics, and a lot of times independent comics are in black and white because it's easier to publish. It's cheaper. And so one of them was like, yeah, you know, it's interesting. You're reading Marvel and DC and then reading like an independent black and white comic. It takes me a little bit of time to adjust to it. And so I've often thought about like coloring the comic book and then taking it back to the comic book store and be like, hey, I finished the comic book for you. Now you can sell it. But that is weird, man. That no punctuation, and these books are pretty long too, right? So you have to put up with that for a long time.
Yeah, I think they're pretty standard size. Blood Meridian's not that. I mean, but that's the thing. It does actually. Now I'm thinking of it. It is longer than it feels because there's no like breaks, right? There's no like indentations for quotes, and like, you know, when someone else speaks, it goes down a line, and so it's all just big blocks, kind of, which is like that's part of reading. Is more than just absorbing every single, you know, the next word after the other. Like, there's a reason that there are line breaks and there are chapter breaks. Like it keeps you going. It makes the reader want to keep reading. It gives people a break. You like big block paragraphs sometimes are good for certain, like let's say a chase scene or something could be a big block because it gives it that claustrophobic feel and right on your heels. And then you know, punchy dialogue can be one after the other. And there's a reason for that. And I don't know why he said, fuck that. Like, I don't know why. Anyway, I'm looking at the list of Flowers for Algernon. I'm not a big crier, but that one did make me cry. Very sad book. Do you know what that one is?
Yeah, it's about a guy who starts off like really smart and then he gets dumb.
Starts dumb, gets smart, and then
that's right.
Spoil it, but they made a Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode about it called Flowers for Charlie. Very funny. I read a lot of these ones too, but not as many. All right. Oh, Heinlein. He wrote Starship
Troopers.
Yeah, I have that on my. That's Heinlein's. He's an interesting guy. Definitely would be problematic now. He was like an open fascist. He was like very.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know if fascist. He's like very pro like military. The movie is satire.
Yeah.
The book is very much not satire. It's very like pro-military discipline, becoming a quote-unquote citizen through service. Like, no, he was actually for all of that shit. Verhoeven took that and turned it into a satire.
Yeah,
really fun.
And I even read somewhere that Verhoeven, like, it was kind of cathartic for him because he grew up during the Nazi era, and so for him it was sort of like his way of kind of getting back at that sort of hyper militarized, you know, the serve the state sort of thing. So Starship Troopers is a cool movie, and I'm sure we've talked about it a little bit, but it's like it's one of those movies.
It's one of my favorite movies.
It's one of those movies, like when it came out, it seemed like people were a little confused by it because they thought it was just like a straightforward,
which I think is great satire.
Yeah. They thought it was kind of like a straightforward action sci-fi movie, but it was actually no, it's actually pretty intelligent when you kind of strip back.
That's a perfect example that you said that, because right there, that's probably one of the movies I've seen the most. My friend and I best friend growing up, we would rewatch the same, like Starship Troopers, Monty Python, The Holy Grail, Mortal Kombat. Like we would rewatch these movies. So like when I was like 9, 10 years old, I did think it was just an action movie, and it was just cool to watch people get ripped apart by giant bugs and shoot flamethrowers, and all of these training scenes. And I appreciated it as pure violent entertainment as a 10-year-old, and then in my late teens, early 20s, I appreciated it differently because it had more to say, and it was very anti-war and anti-military and all of those very anti-federalist state. And that's what we were just talking about with Lex Friedman's books. Maybe he read Brave New World as a 15-year-old, and then reading it in your 30s, maybe you look at it differently. You associate with different characters. Like that happens all the time. It's like when you're a kid, you associate with the rebellious boy. And then when you read it when you're 47 and you're a father, you associate with the father figure or something.
There's just been so much mind reading on the part of Lex Friedman's critics, like just assuming like the most like the worst intentions on Lex, instead of just being like, oh cool, like
I think
this guy's reading, cool, nice.
What bothered me about it, one, is just to attack anyone at all over a reading list. It's just like, what the fuck are you doing with your life? But I think what really it actually bothered me was that it's Lex. Like going after someone who's more, like, let's say it was like Ben Shapiro or something, right? Like going after someone who's more outspoken with their views and provocative, like I couldn't think of someone more just like, I feel bad for the guy. Like why are you going after him?
Right, exactly. But yeah, man, I think he's a good guy, and I think that he'll get through this, and I'm glad that he handled this with a lot of grace and humor. So good on Lex.
I think a lot of people, this is one of those ones where it's a few nasty, loud voices. And most people were like, what are you doing, dude? Or like, what do you, like, why are you attacking this guy for putting out, it's so wholesome. Just like, but I got this reading list. I'm going to read like one of these a week. And then like all these people's attacking him. Like, oh my God.
Right.
All right.
Oh, real quick on the Taleb thing. So, previously, Taleb had made an interesting point, but I don't think it was worth applying to Lex. So, Taleb wrote an essay, a long, dense essay years ago, but it was talking about how to spot frauds in society, and like specifically like the sort of cultural frauds. So he says, like, for example, I can't remember the exact hypothetical that he named, but like, it was something along the lines of like, if somebody claims to be a film fanatic or a film expert, and you ask them what their favorite films are, and they say, oh, The Godfather and Citizen Kane, it's like, yeah, but every wannabe film connoisseur has seen that. Like, show me that you've dug deep into, like, you found some obscure French film from 1948 or something like that. Like, show me that you've dug past the source. And he goes, that's how you can spot a sort of cultural fraud. And I kind of agreed with him there. But here's the thing: Lex has never positioned himself as a cultural expert. He's always come off as very humble and curious. So like that's what made his reading list even more good. I think was sort of like, hey, look, I'm going back to the basics sort of thing. So it's like, I'm not trying to be like a literary expert. I just want to read the classics for now and maybe dig deeper later on or something.
Yes, that all, like, Lex isn't saying he's an expert in these things. Like, he's not a literary professor.
Exactly.
Like, he's not a professor of dystopian novels or so, like, this is solely for enjoyment and a more comprehensive like approach to 2023 for him.
Right.
What Taleb said about those movies, like, yes, those are the movie buff,
the sort of greatest hits,
name drops. Yeah, my response would be, well, I do kind of roll my eyes sometimes. People say those movies, but not if it's like, okay, why? Like, why The Godfather? Why Citizen Kane?
Right.
And I think that is like, take one more step. It's just like, oh, well, because this is like the best man. Like, okay, well then, I don't really believe you. But if you can name like technical things, or like I can name, I don't love Citizen Kane. I think it's great and for its time period. But like, there are like hyper technical things I've watched YouTube videos of that I appreciate from that movie, for instance, like the way they moved the camera from, I think, like one room to the other and through a window that was like not common at the time, like shit like that. If you can name that stuff and that's what you appreciate and why it's the best movie, oh, awesome. Like, I don't think you're a fraud, but it's just like because that's what you're supposed to say. And you're just you're phony.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, I did get my aunt sent me a Quentin Tarantino book, which is cool. It's like, it's by Quentin Tarantino, but it's about film.
So Cinema Speculation?
It might be. It's an orange cover.
Yeah. I just got that. I got that one. And I got the hard.
Really?
Yeah, that was one of the other books I got. That one and then the hardcover of.
Why don't we read it at the same time and then talk about it?
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not reading it next. I'm finishing this this book on the Underground Railroad. I'm doing research with it. It's all primary sources. Then I'm doing, I need a novel. Like, I like to switch up nonfiction and fiction. So I'm doing a Murakami book, Wind Up Bird Chronicle. He's one of my favorite writers. After that, maybe I'll do Tarantino. So we can time it up and then we can talk about it on the show.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah. Let me know when you get ready to read that. Cause I'm reading a couple other books right now. So, but yeah, let me know.
Another cool gift I got was, speaking of Dostoevsky, I got a family heirloom, which is cool, of Crime and Punishment. So it's an old translation of Crime and Punishment that was my grandmother's, went to my aunt, and then my aunt passed it down to me. So it's from like the 40s or 50s. Oh shit. So it's like, it's not like something I would actually read because it's kind of tattered. I have my own copy of it, like a small Bantam books size of it, or version of it that I actually read. But it is cool. It has these old illustrations in it. And it's real cool, kind of like calligraphy, that like Cyrillic kind of calligraphy looking, very Eastern European look to it. So I'm like, oh, that's a really sweet gift that my aunt gave me.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
They used to know how to make books back then.
Yeah, I think the like Instagramification of books, like if you look at cover, like a lot of my friends posted reading lists. I did not comment on them at all. I'm sure they were all great. But
you call them frauds or
no, not at all. But if you look at the covers, dude, they all look the same.
Yeah.
It's all like pastels, big letters, sometimes like a woman in sunglasses or something. And it's all just because of Instagram. And I miss, and I'll go to the library sometimes to take a break, and I'll like just pull random books off the shelf. And like some of the covers that used to exist were so cool. Especially in like fantasy and sci-fi, were just like so detailed. They were like works of art themselves.
Yeah,
and it was so cool. It was so not like what you see today.
Yeah. No, I've seen some video essays about how that was one of the ways, like in the 70s and 80s, how like sci-fi and horror authors when they were not very well known, but they managed to get like a good artist. And it's like that was one of the ways that they managed to kind of stand out. Yeah, is because they like just the covers had more identity.
Yeah. They were fun. Like there's at the Strand in the city. Well, the one I go to is in our neighborhood that is like, there's not like the big Strand. It's a smaller one or a much smaller one. But there's this whole Pulp Fiction section, which has like those old cool covers to them too. And I'll check those out.
Yeah. But man, speaking of books and words and shit. Should we get to the words that you're not allowed to say at Stanford?
I hate this so much. All right. And I know like this is a great topic. So let's give some background.
Yeah.
Stanford is a university out in the Bay Area, the worst part of the country. No offense. I'm just kidding. I'm sure it's lovely.
My dad works he works at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, but not the actual university. So.
Where does he work?
The Linear Accelerator Center. So he works at the particle accelerator where they crash particles into each other.
Is your dad a scientist?
No, he's a machinist guy. So he builds parts for the machine.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. He mostly just spends all of his time on eBay. Because one of those things where it's like, like you
wait, like for work or like shopping?
For sure. Well, so for shopping. Well, because I mean, it's one of those, his job is like, once you design the part in the computer, then you send off to a machine and then it builds it. So he just has a lot of free time. Just like, okay,
gotcha.
Like, so.
All right. Well, maybe cut that so your dad doesn't get fired.
Oh yeah. But
so yeah, Stanford's is a very good school out in California, and they're nuts, like most very good schools in this country.
Yeah.
And they came out with this, and I'm not even kidding. This is what's called the Elimination of Harmful Language Initiative. See right there. And I did look into this a little. I read actually the Daily Beast of all places was shitting on this, which was kind of like semi shitting on, but definitely drawing attention to it, calling it insane, or like I don't know. It's journalism, so it's like this list is being called insane, and they didn't really have a take on it. They were like conservatives are attacking it, but they didn't defend it really at all. Like
Right.
So I'll take that as a win. So I'll read. Let me read the opener here. I'm not going to read where it comes from. So it's the goal of the elimination of harmful language initiative is to eliminate many forms of harmful language, including racist, violent, and biased. Example: disability bias, ethnic slurs, gender bias, implicit bias, sexual bias, language in Stanford websites and code. So this really is. At first, I thought this was going to be like a speech code thing, which was a big issue on college campuses. I think it's the 90s. Right, 80s and 90s, and that's where really FIRE came from, the Foundation for individual rights in education.
Yeah.
They have expanded now. They're basically taking the role of the ACLU, which is great because there's a
gap in the market there.
There's a gap there, but that is how they started. Was for basically speech codes on campuses. They would protect both students and professors, all conservatives, liberals. A lot of times they protect leftist people protesting for Palestinian rights, and they protect right-wing people for whatever they protest, and so the very objective, non-biased group, and that's why I thought this was at first. And FIRE did come out with a tweet, obviously denouncing this and saying how crazy it is. But they say this is for tech, like I said here, websites and code. Obviously, Stanford and Palo Alto is that's Silicon Valley, right? It's the heart of Silicon Valley. So that's a big deal there. I want to stop right there and say, I don't care. I don't give a shit what this is for. You have to mock this and ridicule this at the stages and rip it out by the root. You have to excoriate the shit or is it extirpate? I always get those.
Excoriate means to rip apart,
rip apart, yeah. But one is to pull out by the root, because this will start here and then go other places. That's always how it starts.
Yeah.
It always starts, and that's how it started. Oh, it's only universities. Why do you care about what they're doing at crazy campuses and, liberal arts colleges in Oregon? Well, because now it's at Fortune 500 companies. Yes. Now it's at your organization, and it's at, your school board and all that shit. So you have to mock this shit. Yes. You have to mock this shit mercilessly because it's fucking insane. We will go through this. It is way worse than I imagined. So, the purpose of this website is to educate people about the possible impact of the words we use. Language affects different people in different ways. We're not attempting to assign levels of harm to the terms on the site. We also are not attempting to address all informal uses of the language. I'm going to include there yet. This website focuses on potentially harmful terms used in the United States, starting with a list of everyday language and terminology. Our suggested alternatives, they put that in quotes, are in line with those used by peer institutions and within the technology community. Now, actually, they say content warning here. I want you to remember that, because that is going to come up later, which I just caught this now. Yeah. This website contains language that is offensive or harmful. Please engage with this website at your own pace. So if you need to take a break here from reading these horrible terms, by the way, N-word does not appear on here, or any other like any other terms that could actually be jarring, like real slurs. There's not a single, I would say, real slur on here, like something you hear in a barbershop, right? This is just like the most basic shit. So it's broken into different categories, and then each category has the word, which will be instead of using X, consider using Y, and then they give context for it. So the first section, start in alphabetical order, is ableist. I'm not going to read the definition of ableist. If you've been online at all, you know what that is. Yeah. So instead of using addict, consider using person with a substance use disorder. Right away, I'm like, oh boy. So my question here, my note I have here is, like, has NA changed this? Like Narcotics Anonymous, or has Alcoholics Anonymous? Like a lot of these you're going to see are, the point of language is to communicate with each other. Right. And a lot of these just make that harder to do while not changing the thing. So when they say instead of addict, consider using person with a substance use disorder, that's an addict. It's just a longer-winded way of saying that.
Yeah.
And the context here, a lot of them repeat themselves. So this one is using first language helps to not define people by just one of their characteristics. My other note here is, what about race, gender, religion? We don't do that with any of those. We're not saying, when we say a black person, we're not saying person with a darker skin pigmentation. We say a black person. When we say a Christian, we would say someone who believes in that Jesus Christ died on the cross and rose is the Son of God and the Holy Spirit in the Trinity, died on the cross and rose from the dead after 3 days. No, we say a Christian. But like all of that info is contained in that term.
Yeah.
If you don't believe that, you're not a Christian.
Right.
Like so a lot of this is just long-winded ways of saying the thing, which makes communicating more hard and more like, and I try and use this word sparingly, but like Orwellian, and just like mixing up language and confusing it. And actually a lot of Orwellian, I'm not really using that. A lot of it was like combining words like wrong think, right? Like taking them and putting them together. Like this it's the same concept, but making it longer. And they're just shibboleths to show like who's in and who is out. Because if you say addict, if I'm talking to you, Joe, and I use the term addict right away, if you're in that camp, know, oh no, he's not one of us. He's not using the right term. He's not progressive. He's not educated. If I say person with a substance use disorder, it's like, you may continue. You are one of us. So. Right.
And you're right about how, the point of language is to communicate. One of the few times that you are correct.
You can stop there. I
know. But about how, the purpose of language is to be able to communicate information. And a lot of these terms, probably all of them to some, or at least most of them at least, they are shortcuts to comprehension, where it's like, okay, instead of saying somebody who believes in this and that and blah, 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 this is called a Christian. Someone who has a substance abuse problem, let's just say they're an addict. It's like, okay, I know what you mean by those terms. Okay, gotcha.
You know who I feel really bad for?
What's that?
People who are learning English. And like a lot of them are learning at universities. It's like, I learn other languages. I constantly, reinforce my Spanish. I use it a good amount.
Yeah.
And Spanish is a fairly straightforward language.
Yes.
And it's like, my God, if you're trying to learn English, which is already, what I say about English I don't mean go on a tangent here. I'll be quick. It's like, English is a really, I think, easy language to learn the simple part because it's so prevalent. It's a language of the internet and TV and media and all of that. And it's the lingua franca of the world, really.
Yeah.
But to master English, to get all of its nuance is so difficult. It is such a weird language that I feel so bad for people who are just getting this shit. And then they're like, no, that's not a homeless person. That's someone who in their current situation at this time does not have a roof above their head. like, oh my God, these poor immigrants from India or like the Philippines are just trying to learn this fucking language.
I mean, it's yet another example of how wokeness, like they claim to be defending, minority groups, but in many ways they're actually just like setting them, like they're actually just setting them providing more challenges for them. And it's like, you're not making it easy for people who are learning English as their second language. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Like you know that you're.
And you're right. And it's so, well, again, I hope that this isn't being taken seriously, but this is why it has to be mocked and ridiculed mercilessly now. But you have to make this shit sound so fucking stupid. Because this cannot take hold. It's absolutely ridiculous. And we've talked about one word on this list, by the way. So let's move on.
Yeah, there's 12
and
pages
I'm just going by what I've like made notes and circled. Like, we're not doing every word, of course.
Yeah.
But right after addict is addicted, and then basket case. So first of all, how is this even like so the context here? So instead of using basket case, they say consider using nervous, right? Which to me is not, those are not synonyms. Like when I use basket case, I've always used it as someone who's just like super paranoid and all over the place.
Yeah.
I guess someone who would need a shrink, like all in their head.
Right.
That's way beyond nervous to me. Like those are not, if I just substitute those words out, I would not get the same meaning. And their context here is originally, and try not to laugh, originally referred to one who has lost all 4 limbs and therefore need to be carried around in a basket. Challenge. I want to see your citation on that because I don't believe that's true. I don't think anyone, if that is true, give them the benefit of the doubt, I don't think anyone who's ever used that in the past 50 years has meant it to mean someone who has lost all 4 limbs and to be carried around in a basket. Because if that's true, what does their nervousness is the least of their problems. So why is that like, and you're going to see a lot of that in this list, is that the context, even if true, which I don't believe a lot of them are true, people are not using them to mean that at all. And would not even, there's probably 5 to 10 on here that I'm like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so that's one of my many problems with this thing of like we have to dig up the supposed bigotry behind something, and it's like the only ones who are preserving the bigotry of this term or this idea, it's you. It's like you're the one who's reminding everybody, hey, it's like, but yeah, the basket case is like like you're
100%. Like okay, there's been a lot of shit in human history, a lot of really horrible things, people treated really terribly, and that happened. What's better than having it just fade into the ether of collective memory, like just gone? Like I'm not in the collective memory, in the that like the absence of collective memory. So by bringing it up, you're not doing that. It's like you're resuscitating it.
Exactly. I know that there was I don't know if you saw this, but there was a debate on Twitter within the last few weeks about the term "knocked up." Which just means to get.
I missed that one. But.
Oh yeah, well, it just means to impregnate somebody, and so somebody or a woman, a birthing person.
God, what are they doing on Twitter? Who let them on?
But somebody dug up a source from like I can't remember. I think it was like the early 1800s about how the earliest recorded use of the term "knocked up" had a racist connotation because it meant for like I think it was used in the context of a white slave owner getting a black slave pregnant. And so somebody was saying, oh, we shouldn't use the term "knocked up" anymore. But then somebody dug a little more digging and they're like, no, actually it showed up earlier in a non-racial context. Right. So it's like also like when we say "knocked up" today, there's never been a racial implication involved.
Well, I don't know, you can fact check me on this, but I don't think there are any more slave owners in America, so like it's not even possible for that to make sense.
Exactly.
And yeah,
last
that
I checked, it was illegal.
Time.
They made
it was
a law
like
for that.
During the Great Awakening, it was like Gator bait was the Florida Gators, the University of Florida football. They would do the Gator chomp, and they would call the other team Gator bait, like we're going to eat you up, we're going to beat your team, and it's like, oh, it's racist because white people used to use black children for Gator bait. It's like, no, that came from a black football player in like the 80s or something using it like against another team. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Can't have fun.
No. Well, I mean, that we all know that. So let's move on. A quick note on committed suicide. So I was a part of a like anti-suicide prevention group in college. I was very like hippie and liberal and wanted to do stuff like that, which again, I'm very much against suicide. Don't do it. It's not good for you, but and this was something I remember learning back then. And I even kind of changed my language. And it's like, because the term committed, it's like committing a crime. I was told to use, what was it? Take one's own life, like take your own life. Like, so instead of Joe committed suicide, Joe took his own life. I mean, who are you offending here, right? If you say they committed suicide, like so that was my only note on that. Their context is just the same ableist language that trivializes the experience of people living with mental health conditions. So I don't know what that means here. Like their context needs context, but I just wanted to note that is something I actually did. I'd say like that doesn't mean like if you say committed suicide, that's a problem, but I would usually say, oh, he took his own life. Like,
it's a weird thing because the publication that I write for, they have me write "died by suicide" as well. But it just seems weird. It's like colored persons versus person of color. It's like this is sort of like I don't see like it seems to sort of like splitting hairs to me. But
Yeah, it is. It is. Like I agree. And again, I don't think it's a big deal, but I do remember
Yeah.
that. That was like
Yeah,
a decade ago.
Yeah.
So that's been around for a while. I'm just gonna go down like my notes here.
Yeah.
Crazy. We can't use crazy anymore. One of the most common words ever. But
Yeah.
but why? I mean, so that's just dumb. I won't spend time on that. But for consider using, they have wild, which to me is like wild. When I think wild, I think, like Mowgli in the jungle. I think
Yeah.
racist connotations. I think like the 90s when there were the wildings, right? Do you
Yeah.
remember that? Like Donald Trump, and there were those black kids in Central Park who like beat the shit out of a woman, or like didn't, but they're like wilding out was a thing where like groups of black kids would beat the shit out of people.
Yeah.
And like to me, that seems way more racist, if anything, than crazy. So that to me is like a big slip up by them. Their context is the same. Ableist language that trivialize, like, no, you're just copy and pasting here. So to me, I'm like, you even using your own logic, team Stanford, like you're wrong here. Like wild seems way worse than crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
Lame.
yeah, I was gonna do lame, like cripple, and then they say consider using person with a disability. Like, no, that's way too broad. Like cripple means something. Person with disability could be like someone with anxiety. That's different than someone who can't walk.
Right.
Dumb. That's shitty. Here's another one. Handicap parking. Handicapped to me is like right in the middle. Like I didn't think it was problematic, but I don't really say it that much anymore, except for maybe parking. But isn't disabled much worse when you think about it? Like you're literally saying the prefix dis means like unable to, not right. It's negative. And then able, and this whole section is about fucking ableism. So when it's like disabled, like I would think handicap gets rid of all that.
Right.
So that's my note on that.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid going through different versions of that, because at first I remember like when I was very young, it was like, oh yeah, the person's crippled, you got to be nice to them or something. And then it was like when I got a little older, oh don't say crippled, you got to say handicapped. Okay, disabled, got it. Okay, or handicapped. Okay, cool. Oh, don't say handicapped, you got to say. So it's like, and then when I was going to write for Screen Rant. They make you say non-disabled. No, it was person with disability, and then everyone else was non-disabled. I don't know. I can't keep up.
Yeah, well, that's fucking stupid. Screen Rant's dumb. You wrote for Screen Rant?
I was going to. I applied to write for them, but it was I had to take a test, and I was like, okay, nope, I'm out.
Yeah. Right. Well, you had to take a test, see if you're like, are you one of us? Like that. That's really what it is. Insane. Again, it's just wild is on there, which surprises me. Yeah. Lame. I'm not going to stop saying lame. I tried to actually substitute lame for gay for a while, but gay is too fun to say. Yeah. And it's like, I'm not saying anything about homosexual people when you say gay. Like no one is saying that anymore in that context.
Right.
But like they're honestly, it's like a lot of people say lame and gay. Like they're synonyms. There's nothing to do with who you're sleeping with.
Right. Exactly.
What about this one? Mentally ill. Can't say mentally ill anymore.
I thought that was a nice way to say.
Right. I know.
Something else.
OCD. Consider using detail oriented. Those are not the same thing.
I know.
Those are not even close to the same thing.
I mean, I guess it's like cut down on like the casual, utterances of these terms where you can't like, I can't work with Ben today. He's too OCD. And but that seems like.
Oh, I see what you're saying here. So. Well, I wish they gave that content. They just copy and pasted the same thing. So OCD, as in like, if you don't have OCD, don't say that.
I guess.
Like only use it actually as a medical term.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's a little more understandable, but still, I don't know. Fine. Paraplegic, isn't that just a medical term? Like,
yeah.
You're going to say person with a spinal cord injury? That seems way more graphic and like not what people want to hear. Like paraplegic. I don't.
Whenever I hear like that term being used on somebody, I'm like, oh man, that poor person. That's
like quadriplegic. Like my heart sinks when I hear quadriplegic. That's the next one.
Yeah.
And like person with a spinal cord injury, that's quadriplegic and paraplegic are very different things.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
very different standards of life.
Yeah.
Next one, retard. This is one of the ones like I don't say anymore, like, except for right then.
Yeah.
It does kind of just make me feel sad and bad. Like I don't know. I don't say it.
Well, you know, it's actually, I mean, this probably changed, but it was actually like a medical term because, like, you know, like retardation
Yeah.
means to go backwards.
Yeah, or like a fire retardant, like to
Yeah.
stop.
And it's funny because in sheet music, in you know, in music notation, a lot of terms are used in Italian, and so
retardo.
retardando means to slow down. So
right.
there were a few times where I was talking to a non-music person and I mentioned that term, like, whoa, wait, what is that? And it's like, no, it just means to slow down.
Yeah.
But
Right.
yeah.
But it's one of those things where like I don't use it, but I'm not gonna police what you say. Like if someone else says retard, like okay. My bigger thing is like, are you making fun of a person with like a disabled person? Are you making fun of someone with autism or Down syndrome or something?
Right.
Like that's where I would have a problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it would be. Like most of these things, it's a case-by-case basis.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Spaz.
Spaz is on here.
which some of these contexts they actually say like that other communities use this. I hate that term community. That some people use this, but like spaz, I never ever thought as like a mental health issue. I always just thought spaz was like someone who's spastic, like moving around a lot and super hyper and stuff like that. Like I never considered it to. I never even like think of someone with any sort of disability.
Yeah.
Also, I've never heard the term stand-up meeting. Have you ever heard that?
That sounds vaguely familiar. I think it just means like having like an impromptu.
Well, it says consider using quick meeting. I've never heard the term stand-up meeting. Okay. So that's it for it. That was just ableism, by the way.
Yeah.
That is one of the longer ones. Oh my god. We're at an hour. All right. Ageism. Graybeard. This is anti-daddy, and I don't like it. Senile. Consider using instead of graybeard, consider using the person's name. Like, oh, that's a different way of speaking.
Yeah.
Well, like that's describing someone using their name. Like that's not even whatever. Senile person suffering from senility. I've never even heard of senility.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's it for ageism. Colonialism.
The Philippine Islands. I've actually never heard anybody refer to it as that. I just heard Philippines. That's
I've only heard Philippines, and I don't see the big difference there. And
I mean, is that like a super outdated term? It's like saying, oh, like my new roommate's from the dark continent of Africa, where it's like, who the fuck says that? Like, it's just like, do you really need to tell people don't say that? Like, does anybody say that anymore?
Well, okay. I'm glad you bring that up because if you look at the context, Joe, it says this term is politically incorrect and denotes colonialism. Some people of Filipino heritage might use this term though. So are we correcting them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So moronic, absolutely fucking moronic. So culturally, that was it for colonialism. One term. All right. Culturally, did I miss a page for colonialism?
I don't think so. I have the same version that you have here. So
oh, that's right. I sent it to you. Culturally appropriate. Here's one that actually got a lot of that's in a lot of the articles I read. Brave. And consider using. None, do not use. Brave, Joe. We cannot use the term brave. That Pixar movie about the Irish girl with the big red hair, canceled. Because she's brave. Unbelievable.
Well, that means we can cancel a whole bunch of woke feminists on Twitter, though, who every time, like,
didn't Katy Perry come out with a song called Brave?
Well, I mean, there's that thing where it's like, oh, stunning and brave. Like whenever like a feminist comes, whenever a prominent woman comes out and says, by the way, I'm bisexual or something, it's like, that's stunning and brave of you.
And brave, yeah. So that one got a lot of. I just have an exclamation mark next to it. Yeah. Chief. I will never stop using chief. I'm from New Jersey. That's how we talk. I call people chief all the time.
Yeah,
that's absurd. Yeah. That also isn't chief like in Spanish, jefe is chief. It means like boss.
Yeah.
Well, like that's so a lot of these terms they only use in like these really particular contexts. Another one on here, if I skip all the way to tribe,
Hmm.
where it says historically used to equate indigenous people with savages. What about the fucking Germanic tribes who conquered the Roman Empire?
Right.
Like that's what we literally call them, the Germanic tribes. It's like, no,
Yeah.
it's not just the Iroquois and the fucking Apache.
Yeah.
Like there are other tribes. Guru. I mean, okay.
Well, then half of Silicon Valley is going to get canceled for that, because if you go to like LinkedIn, it's like, oh, like I'm an IT guru or I'm a networking guru. Yeah, exactly.
Biggest lie ever on every resume.
It's like ninja and then guru, I think, comes after that.
Yeah, spirit animal. I've heard people. Excuse me. I've heard people not say that. Someone did say that in a Slack channel I was in. If they said it to me, I would have not responded well.
Yeah.
And I'd like saying things from my spirit animal.
Well, really... a bunch of astrology loving feminists are going to be canceled over that.
That's right. It's like my God, how many of our states are named after native tribes, sports teams, like towns, streets, so much stuff. Like I don't know. I don't see why not saying. And also, did they consult with any quote unquote indigenous people?
I doubt it.
Who are like, no, it's offensive when you use the term tribe.
Yeah. Oh.
Like, again, a lot of it's context. When Steve Buscemi's character in Fargo tells what's his name to smoke a peace pipe, like, okay, yeah, he's being fucking derogatory there. Like the native character who beats him up. But like saying that, oh my God, corgis are my spirit animal. Like, how is that offensive to anyone?
Right. And a lot of these terms are really cool. Like on the warpath. Like, oh, that guy's on the warpath. Like that's a cool term. I like that term.
Did I miss that one? Yes, on the warpath. Oh my God. So my dad used to tell me and my brother that when my mom was on the warpath, and he would warn us, he's like, guys, get out of the house, mom's on the warpath. Like a lot of times it'd be like Sundays. It was like if you ever said you were bored, you would have to do chores. So he like that was a big part of my childhood. It's my dad warning us that mom's on the warpath.
And sometimes I can at least understand to some extent, like Pocahontas. Like, okay, don't go around calling indigenous coworkers Pocahontas. Like, okay, I can understand that.
Yes. unless you work with Elizabeth Warren, then
exactly.
Then unless you're Donald Trump referencing Elizabeth Warren. Yeah. Who would fucking do that though? Like okay, some of the like Indian giver I think was on here. Like, all right, it's a fun term. Like, fine, I kind of get that a little more, but like saying tribe. Or spirit animal, and definitely not chief. I will never stop saying chief. Ever.
Yeah.
Gender based. A lot of these are dumb. It's just like changing like congressman, congresswoman to congressperson, fireman to firefighter. Like that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
You
can't say freshman. Oh God.
Yeah, that's a thing now. Freshman. Like, when did this become where like man just meant like humanity? It has meant that forever. And I remember that fuck piece of shit up in Canada who I can't stand, Trudeau, like he like corrected someone once, say like instead of mankind, say humankind. If my God, if he had said that to me, I would have said, don't ever fucking interrupt me like that. Like, how dare you? Like to score some lib point on mankind versus like you know what I'm saying. Like I don't mean humans with
penises
with male genitalia. I mean people. Exactly, and for you to stop it was one of the most offensive things I've ever seen a head of state do. I mean, like Gaddafi, Hitler, like Stalin, like this offended me more than anything they've ever done. I take that back. But in the modern age, Idi Amin, Pol Pot. Anyway, gentlemen, though, I don't get, because it lumps a group of people using masculine language and or into gender binary groups, which don't include everyone. But what if everyone I'm talking to is a man?
Right.
Even a trans man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, they're all gentlemen, right? Isn't that correct? Like, if I'm talking to a group of 3 biological men and 2 trans men, what's wrong with me saying gentlemen?
Yeah. Nothing. It's actually very inclusive, honestly.
Yes, it is exactly. It's really inclusive. So,
Yeah,
A
all
lot-
of this.
A lot of the gender ones,
like,
a lot of the gender ones are pretty dumb. Yeah, we can skip them for time's sake.
Self-eating.
Yeah, like here, mankind, people, humankind, human beings, like whatever. Like I don't I'll ask, like maybe we should ask women, like when you hear mankind, do you feel excluded? Like
Yeah.
do you really think that they're saying everyone but you? Like everyone who's not like you? I don't think so.
Well,
Seminal, leading, groundbreaking. Consider using this reinforces male dominating language. What?
Seminal fluid, semen.
Oh my God, is that what that means?
I think that's what they're referring to. Oh my God.
Are you
have
serious?
to like dig to get.
Never seminal means semen. Oh my God. That's crazy.
Oh, geez.
Some of these other ones are kind of dated.
It's wild.
Like,
it's wild.
It is wild. It's wilding. Tranny. I don't think a lot of people say tranny, but even with tranny, it's some in the community do identify with and self-describe as the term though. So like Buck Angel, I know he calls himself a tranny.
Yeah.
You guys, that's another one. I will never stop saying you guys. I'm not gonna say y'all because I'm not from the South.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna say folks. I don't like the way it gets stuck in my throat, folks. Like I don't like that.
Yeah.
Everyone makes me sound like I'm like a guru, like a cult leader. Like everyone, come in, everyone. Like like you guys. Like it's the second person plural.
Yeah.
Like I don't right. Yeah,
I've seen women refer to groups of women as guys.
That's exactly what I had here. I've heard like, people from New Jersey and California, and there was this language study done in the country. That I talk about like, what do you call this type of sandwich? How do you say caramel? Is it caramel, things like that. And like a huge swath of the country says you guys, basically, except the South, even like Southern Florida says you guys. Like parts of the Mid South say like you all instead of y'all, but like everyone else says you guys. Yeah. And I'm never gonna say folks. First of all, it's German and racist, and second of all, I don't know, dumb, and I'm not gonna stop saying that. Okay, so imprecise language, abort.
So whenever I hear anybody saying abort, like as in the context of like let's stop or let's cancel this mission or whatever, I always think of like sci-fi, like abort, like a spaceship. Like
I think of like Admiral Akbar.
Like,
it's a trap. I use the term abortion a lot. I call things an abortion. Yeah, that comes from my high school football coach, who we would watch film and he'd be like, "Well, that play was an abortion," and which would be, and it stuck with me. I think it's hilarious, and I don't understand it. Like this term can. So I'm reading content. This term can unintentionally raise religious, moral concerns over abortion, but it is a negative term. Like if you're aborting something, whether that's a football play or a fetus, you literally want to get rid of it. That's the point. You don't get to have your cake and eat it too. So you don't want it. And that's for a lot of times, I personally think that's fine. Sometimes I don't, but you're aborting it. So I'm aboard like that play, that tweet, like I'll respond, I'll reply to that. I'll be like, this tweet's an abortion. Like this deserves to be getting like expelled, like aborted. Yeah. So suck it. This one was on a lot of the articles, they didn't list all these, they had like 3 or 4. American. So Joe, this is something I've been dealing with for a while. So once in a while, you get these fucking douchebags who'll be from like Venezuela and be like, I'm an American too, because like South America, or a Canadian could be like, I don't care. The point of language is to communicate. The demonym of people from the United States is American. Ask anyone in the fucking world. No one is saying United Stadium. Like it doesn't. No one is saying U.S. citizen. Okay, no one is saying that because that's not how people talk. They're saying like a Spaniard, a Frenchman, a German, an American, a Japanese person, right? A Japanese. There's an asterisk here I'll do for one's coming up, but like American is just like they're not all precise. Like someone from New Zealand, they might go by a Kiwi, like New Zealander or a Kiwi or something. Like these are just terms, and this is what's been called forever. If anything, it's other countries that have been using American as a slur against us, like fucking Americans, like lazy Americans, greedy Americans. So I hate this. I hate this so much, this context of this term often refers to people from the United States only. You know, I'm going to say something snobby fucking, thereby insinuating that the U.S. is the most important country in the Americas, which is actually made up of 42 countries. First of all, it is the most important country in the Americas. I'm not saying that's right. It's the most important country in the world.
Right.
I don't even want us to have that role necessarily. I'm an isolationist, but we are the most important country. We are. But that's still not the point of this term. Someone from Venezuela is a Venezuelan. Someone from Brazil is Brazilian. Someone from Haiti is Haitian. Like Canada is Canadian. It doesn't matter if they're all on the American continent, north or south. Like no one. Now, I might refer to a South American in certain contexts or a North American, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Like, oh, you know, the South, like the only teams to have ever won a World Cup come from Europe or South America. That's a fact, right? A South American team won the most recent World Cup, right? Argentina. So like, okay, but I wouldn't call a bunch of Argentinians Americans.
Right.
Like they're just not. They're Argentinians. So I hate this term so much in so many different ways. It's so dumb. And I remember learning Spanish. Last thing I'll say about this. I remember learning Spanish. There were some things that were like, when you describe yourself as estadounidense instead of Americano, where it's like, because you're from the United States, which is stupid. Because everyone knows when you say you're American. No, if you ever go to another country and they say, where are you from? And you say American, they're going to go, wait, Nicaragua? Like, no, they're gonna assume you're from New York, you're from Texas, or you're from California, because I've lived in other countries. That's where everyone thinks you're from. Maybe Florida, but if you're either from California or New York, and if you're from anywhere in between, you're from Texas. That's just how it works.
It fucking rocks. America's the best.
I think it is in a lot of ways. Some ways, now, you know, I'm a big fan of French culture and things like that. But I'm also a red blood American. I think this is really dumb. Let's move on to something that you maybe will get. First of all, half breed. Yeah, I think that one. I don't think a lot of people are saying half breed anymore. Yeah.
Like, I feel like this would just be like, I feel like the KKK would love this list. Like, oh, you know, we got to start using some of these terms.
Yeah, I forgot about this one. So Hispanic, which is like used on the fucking census. I know I'm saying fuck. I'm sorry. One of my personal resolutions, trying to swear less, but that's not working.
I'm trying to swear more, actually. I'm doing a bad job of that in this podcast.
So consider using Latinx.
No.
Yeah. So I love how they say, for the context for this, they don't say that no one ever fucking uses this term unless you go to like NYU. Like, no one uses Latinx. In fact, in polling, more people of Latino origin or consider themselves Latino find it offensive than who use it. So it's like the people, again, it's a perfect example. People you're trying to not offend actually find the term you want to use more offensive than the term you're saying that is offensive.
And it's actually like an example of cultural, like colonialism. It's like we're you know, wealthy, educated people who are going to be like telling these people of color how to fix their language so it's more inclusive. It's like, no, you're not going to teach us savages.
And also, I think this context is also wrong. Hispanic to me always included Spain. Like, Spain was called Hispaniola. Yeah. Like Latino was what was used to mean people from like Central and South America. Yes. Like Spanish speaking, like I guess the argument could be, well, are Brazilians Latino or Haitians? Like, no, that's argument go back and forth. I don't think so. Like, that aside, like Latino separated people from like European Spanish.
Yeah.
Which was Hispanic, which when you included everyone.
Yeah.
Indian summer, while it may be innocently used, yes, all the time, literally 100% of the time, describe a beautiful time of year. It could have unintended negative impact on those who hear it. Because this term infers that indigenous people are chronically late. Where?
I never heard that. I never heard it like used in that context.
Never. Again, you just made a stereotype that now people might use.
I know.
This one did surprise me, Karen. I'm
Yeah,
surprised you didn't include that
like,
here.
I like the instead consider using
Demanding
demanding or
or
entitled.
entitled white woman. You're being so. I'll say that next time. So saying you're being such a Karen, I'll be like, you're being a demanding or entitled white woman, Karen, Sharon.
Oh,
Oriental. I do get that. I did play football with a guy who got very upset when like the other team started saying like cover the Oriental, which I mean when
sure,
using that
yeah.
kind of pretty bad. I
Well,
think
and
it'd be kind of. I think we should start calling ourselves Occidentals. I think it'd be kind of cool. But Westerner, I think it's like Occidental doesn't have that ring to it. But yeah, I don't think are people.
I think
like,
the last time I ever heard anyone use that term to refer to Asians was like they were like 92 years old. They're like, oh, I once worked with an Oriental man.
Yeah, and you get a pass at a certain age. Yeah, or it's Asian. Like people say Asian now.
Yeah, no.
Peanut
Peanut Gallery?
Again, this term refers to the cheapest and worst section in theaters where many black people sat during the vaudeville era. Okay, so first, even if that's true, it's many black people, but not all. I'm sure white people sat there too.
Yeah.
And I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Ever.
Again, another one of these terms where it's like, okay, like I've heard that term used many times, but never with any racial implication at all.
Yeah. Then here, people of color used generically. So use BIPOC. No, I'm not going to use fucking BIPOC
God.
because that's like, what if I'm not always talking about black, indigenous, and people of color. Like Latinos can be white. I'm talking to one right now. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but I still want to refer to Latinos.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't think you would you consider yourself a person of color?
I don't know.
Well, figure it out.
Because I'm not very colored. I don't have this light is not doing anything, but like
it's like not helping me.
But like when my parents, they did the 23andMe thing, and they're like they're basically like roughly 50% indigenous.
Right.
So
all right. We'll lean into it then.
Okay. Yeah. Straight. You can't say straight.
Yeah, you have to say hetero. Yeah, you can't say straight anymore or stupid. Well, so this term applies to anyone who is not heterosexual, is bent or not normal. What? I've never heard of tar baby. Have you ever heard that term in your life?
I've heard it, but I can't remember the context of it. So again, kind of digging up terms that
this
is used as a difficult prop.
No, this is a dismissive term for a black person. Since when? I've never heard that term in my life.
Yeah.
Thug. So a suspect or criminal. Well, no, you're not a suspect if I know you did something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you mug me, you're a thug. You're not a fucking suspect. Like I have proof of it. Or a criminal. Like maybe a thug isn't a criminal. Like you could be a thug who's just like kind of a bully, a dick. Yeah. Like and I'm sorry, when you have a culture that promotes like thug life and young thug and baby I'm a thug, all these things, like okay, then we're gonna call you a thug. Also, I associate thugs with like meathead Italians and Irish mafia guys, like that kind of shit too. Like they're thugs. Right. It's brawn or not brawn. That doesn't have a negative connotation. It's like muscle. Yeah. Well, like the muscle for the mafia is a thug. Yeah. Like the guys who like come and they shake you down. You know, they're thugs. But of course,
I mean, if I was like in Tokyo and they said, "Oh, don't mess with that guy. He's a thug," and he's
I'd be like racist.
I know exactly.
I like calling things the barrio. I think it's fun.
It's fun.
It just means neighborhood.
Yes.
Like with like a poor connotation. Okay, this one I would think would piss you off. Black hat. Like that literally comes from cinema.
Yeah.
Like that comes from Western cinema where the bad guy would wear a black hat.
Yeah.
Was he ever a black guy?
Not that I know of.
Like they were always white guys with black hats. Like that was the black hat and the white hat. And that was like John Wayne movies and what's his name? Famous actor. Gran Torino.
Oh, Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood. Like the black hat and the white hat. It's like the good versus the bad, the most basic story.
Right.
And somehow they made that. assigns negative connotations to the color black, racializing the term. No, you're racializing the term.
I know. I was gonna say,
I'm
like,
not
what-
racializing the term. A lot of these are just like, honestly, there was a joke. I'm not even fucking kidding. There's a joke back. This is probably like late 2000s. I don't even know what comedian it was, and it was about like joking about political correctness. And he was like, "You can't even say like, oh, I love your black. I mean, African American shirt." Like, you can't even say, like, and that's what literally says: black hat, black mark, black sheep, black bald, black box, blacklisted, like brown bag. Historically associated with brown paper bag tests that certain black sororities and fraternities used to judge skin. Like brown bag, it was just you bring a brown bag to lunch.
Yeah.
Like brown bagging it. It means like cheap. Like, oh, I'm brown bagging it today. I'm not going out to lunch. Where did you get this historically associated with black sororities? Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. How much I know about like Kappa Sigma or whatever.
Cakewalk, you can't say that.
Can't say cakewalk, which they
Sounds
found some archaic enslaved people covertly use exaggerated dance to mock their enslavers. No one knows about this except for like a few history professors.
Right.
I'm not gonna stop saying gangbusters. It's fun.
Yeah.
I know we're kind of running low on time here.
Yeah, I got to take off in a few minutes.
Do you?
I'm going to see the Los Angeles Philharmonic.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and actually, it's French night too. They're playing
nice.
Debussy and Messiaen.
So red team, red is often used disparagingly to refer to indigenous peoples. No, it's fucking not. Like, no, we don't say that like anymore. We even got rid of the Redskins. Like, no one says red team and thinks indigenous people. They think the color red. You fucking idiots. One of the prime colors. Okay, there's not much more here. Master, I mean, that's just dumb. Like, there have been masters of everything. You could be a master of the violin.
Yeah, someone who I know who works in the film industry. They in the more technical side, master and slave, like very very technical terms where it's like, you know, like the master cable and the slave cable. It's like one is the dominant and the other is not. It's like, okay, that makes sense in that context, but they're pushing that one out of terminology now. It's like primary and secondary or whatever. It's like,
could we talk about a few more here?
Yeah.
So the person first one, which is just really dumb, like it's the same thing: prisoner, convict, person who was incarcerated. Like, okay, we've already gone over that. Like, you're just messing with language here. What about Jew?
The term Jew?
Yeah, like Jew. Like that one does kind of have that. Like the term Jew has been used so like in such a deriding way. Yeah. And like, and they honestly say it's in an Always Sunny episode. I have a note here. Literally the first episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which was from 2005. So this is very old. They talk about like, you can't say Jew. You have to use a person of the Jewish faith. Like it's a joke that they talk about. Right. Or Jewish. Like Jew does kind of that hard, like single syllable Jew. Like, yeah. I don't know if someone says like, I'm a Jew. Like he's a Jew. Is that?
I guess it depends on the context. Like,
I think it's. Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't like somebody and you're like, yeah, that stupid fucking Jew or whatever, like, yeah, like
I think that would be kind of bad.
That would be bad. But like if you're like, oh yeah, you know, I got my friend coming over. He's a cool guy. He's this really funny Jewish guy. He's a funny Jew guy or something. I don't think there's anything necessary.
It'd be like, oh, is Jeremy? Is he Italian? No, he's a Jew. Like, yeah. I think that is one of the most context specific words. Yeah. And I won't say more than one way to skin a cat. You know, I don't like a lot of the animal ones anyway. Right. You know, I love cats. I wrote that whole article about it, but it's also like, I wouldn't care if someone else said it. Like, I don't think that's going to turn anyone into an animal abuser. Yeah. So the next three, I want to talk about three more just because they're really, really good, or at least two more. Trigger warning. So they're trigger warning now. They're trigger warning. So you can't say trigger warning. Now we come full circle here to content note, which they have, content warning on the first page. So now trigger warning isn't okay anymore. So the people they're already turning on themselves. So now if you say the thing that they made you say to be careful to say other things, you're doing the wrong thing. Are you following? Yeah. So that's just like chef's kiss, and then the dessert on that. So that was the appetizer. Now the entree of this whole article, my personal favorite, is instead of African American, consider using black. We've done it. We've done it because, my God, the hoops that we would fucking walk through in high school trying to not say black and say African American was like you would trip over and like fall out of your desk trying to not say black instead of say African American. And now they're going back. Fucking believable. They also say when used to refer to a person, the B should always be capitalized. No, my rule is if it's consistent.
Yeah.
So right away, I know what an article is going to say. Pretty much, if they don't capitalize white, but they do capitalize black.
Yeah.
Mine is, and I've seen some where they do both, and that's fine, or they don't do either. But when you start to like, to me, that's just no, that's wrong.
Was it the Associated Press that instituted that rule?
I think they were the first two, but a lot do now.
Yeah.
But I've seen some that like they'll capitalize all of it or none of it. Gyp, I used to say gypped a lot, especially playing video games growing up. I didn't know what it meant at the time.
I don't think anybody did. I thought it just meant you got ripped off.
Yeah, you got ripped off. You got gypped. Like, oh, you in like NFL Blitz, so you gypped me on that one. Then when I grew up and learned about gypsies, I use it even harder now because I don't like gypsies. They're not. I don't give a shit. I'm not like gypsies are not a race, or if they are, fine. Like whatever they are, but they're like I'm talking about the ones who are swindlers.
Right.
I'm talking like if I'm talking about the ethnic group, I'll say Romani, like the Romani people. But if you're trying to get me to sign some pledge thing and then put your hand out and to ask for money and then are going in my pocket and robbing me, you're a fucking gypsy, and I don't give a shit. Like I don't care what I call you. I am surprised they have hick and hillbilly on here.
Yeah, I thought that would be like use that instead of saying white person.
Right. Make sure you use it and say fucking hick. Like hillbillies like jolly. Like there's a high school where I grew up. Their nickname was the Hillbillies, Verona High School Hillbillies. Like, and now it's like a very Italian town, like just nice suburb. But I looked it up. I actually looked it up recently, coincidentally. At the time, it was like kind of a rural area outside of New York City, so they were associating with like that kind of lifestyle. And that's Jude. Yeah, that one I kind of get. My note was okay. ... I guess this one. Don't say Jude. You got Jude. Like I do think it's different from gypped. Yeah, you really Jude me on that one. Yeah, I agree. So there may be 2 or 3 on here that I get.
Sure.
Others, but African American's amazing. We're going back to black, baby. That's the name of this episode.
All right, man. Well, this was fun, and I mean, it was it was pretty painful. As writers, we don't suffer the ghosts of dead definitions lightly. So,
no, fight back against the darkness.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? I was going to quote a poem.
You're probably going to say like "Stay reckless" or something. Or...
Yeah, I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul, and stay reckless.
And green eggs and ham, and
enjoy the Philharmonic.
I will. All right, bye everybody. Stay reckless. Fight the crits.
Fight the crits.